So today we're going to begin our study, like I said, of Isaiah chapters 24 to 27. And the title of the study is Isaiah 24 verse 6. We're going to spend time there. And the three sins that will destroy the world. And there Isaiah brings out three sins that will destroy the world, right? Now, some Old Testament scholars have referred to the book of Isaiah, specifically to Isaiah chapters 24 to 27, as the little apocalypse, right, of the Old Testament, because it has many elements, right, in common with the book of Revelation. And in this study, we will take a look at some of those elements that we find in Isaiah chapter 24. Right. Now, Isaiah 24 verses 17 to 23 describes the effect of the second coming of Jesus on the earth and its inhabitants. So let's give it a read. Isaiah 24 verses 17 to 23.
Fear and the pit and the snare are upon you, O inhabitant of the earth. And it shall be that he who flees from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit, and he who comes up from the midst of the pit shall be caught in the for the windows from one high are open, and the foundations of the earth are shaken. The earth is violently broken. The earth is split open. The earth is shaken exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall totter like a hut. Its transgression shall be heavy upon it, and it will fall and not rise again. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord will punish on high the host of exalted ones. And on the earth, the kings of the earth, they will be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and will be shut up in the prison. After many days, they will be punished. Then the moon shall be disgraced, and the sun ashamed. The Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before his elders gloriously.
Okay, so let's unpack some of those verses. Now, the word in verse 17, there's a word called snare, right? We need to connect snare with Luke chapter 21, verse 35, where Jesus says, "For it will come as a snare on all those who will dwell on the face of the whole earth." So the connection is with the word snare, right? What is snare? Then when you go to verse 18, here we find the word snare also, and it sounds like people are fleeing, right? Where do we find a description of where people are fleeing similar to this? We find that in the book of Revelation. It's reminiscent of Revelation 6 verses 14 to 16, where it speaks of the wicked. When Jesus comes, they are hiding in caves and the rocks of the mountains and fleeing, and they're fleeing and crying for the rocks and the mountains to fall on them because they cannot bear the sight of Jesus, right? So clearly we have this commonality between Revelation and the Gospel of Luke and this passage, right? So we clearly see a link between the three places in Scripture. Now, does Revelation describe a global earthquake when Jesus comes, right? All we have to do is just read the seventh plague in Revelation 16. The last several verses, it speaks about the fact that there's going to be a global, cataclysmic earthquake that has never been seen, and even the islands will be displaced by that earthquake. Then if we look at verse 21, right, we will be looking at this more in our study next week. we will look at verses 21 to 23. We find a host of exalted ones, right? It talks about a host of exalted ones. Who are they? These are the fallen angels. These are Satan's evil angels, and they are going to be punished when Jesus comes, right? So there's going to be the angels who are also going to be punished. And then there's a heavenly group that is going to be punished when Jesus comes. And they are so we have a heavenly group that's going to be punished, and then there are kings of the earth that are going to be punished. So there are two groups, the heavenly group and the earthly group, the kings of the earth and the heavenly group. So the question is, how are they going to be punished? Right? They will be gathered as prisoners are gathered in a pit, it says. Right? This is verse 22. And they will be shut up in a prison. Right? Now, this is talking about the millennium. Right? Millennium that we find in Revelation. The millennium when Satan is jailed here. He's quarantined to the earth with his wicked angels. And while all the wicked are dead on the earth, right? So what makes Satan a prison? Satan is active when he has people he can use to do his work. But when all his people are dead, it's like in a prison. Satan can't leave this earth. He's caught here in a prison. That's what it means. All his followers and all those who he could use to do his wicked work, they are all dead. So that is why earth becomes a prison, because he has nothing to do for a millennium, but think about what he has done. But notice that that is not the end, Satan being in a prison. The end is, it says, after many days, they will be punished, right? It says, after many days, they will be punished. Now, how many stages from this text do we find how many stages does the punishment of the wicked have? We find that there will be two stages. Now, how do we know this? Because it says, it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord will punish on high the host of the exalted one and the kings of the earth. Now, that is stage one. When Jesus comes, all the wicked are dead. Satan is imprisoned here on earth. He doesn't have anybody to tempt or do anything. So he's in a prison. And then it says, they will be gathered in the pit after many days from their first punishment. So they're going to be gathered. They will be punished, but they weren't punished. But if they weren't punished already before the many days, there will be another punishment for them after many days. Right? So there are two stages to the punishment. First punishment is all the wicked die. Satan is bound to the earth here. Then after many days, Satan and the wicked God will raise the wicked dead, all the wicked again, and then they will have a second punishment. So does Satan also have two punishments? His first stage is when he's prisoned here, and Isaiah's many days means in Revelation, it gives us a number. Isaiah here says many days. Revelation says 1,000 years, right? So many days is that. So the millennium is spoken of in the Old Testament. People say it's not spoken of. It is spoken of in Isaiah 24 verse 6. It's called many days, but Revelation calls it the millennium, right? So then Satan, after the 1,000 years, we know that all the wicked will be resurrected by Jesus. They will be shown panoramic high definition video from the beginning of time till the end. The entire world's history will be shown to them, and they will all bow down and say, God was right in what he did. They see what their sins are, and then they are destroyed in the lake of fire. So they have two punishments. One at the time when Jesus comes, one final punishment after the millennium, right? So do the wicked, so, okay, is it the same true for the wicked? It's true for the wicked. Wicked also die. They stay dead for 1,000 years on this earth. Then they will be resurrected and destroyed in the lake of fire. And like I said, many days in Isaiah refers to 1,000 years or the millennium in Revelation. Now, is the Old Testament connected also with Revelation? Obviously, we can see, right? we have, we always have to look at the Old Testament in light of the New Testament. Old Testament is shadows and symbols, where the New Testament is reality, gives us the reality, right? And then what is going to happen? It says then that the moon will be disgraced, and after many days, the moon will be disgraced and the sun ashamed. Now, it doesn't say that they will disappear. It says that there will be a shame. And then what is God going to do? It says, for the Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion. Now, what is Mount Zion? We know that the 144,000 stand on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem. So which Jerusalem is it? It is not the earthly one, it's heavenly one. And Mount Zion is in heaven. It's the heavenly Mount Zion. It's referred to the heavenly city there using, remember we said the writers used symbols that they were familiar with. And before his glorious, elders glorious. And who are the elders? We have in previous studies that we have done together, we have found out from the book of Job as well as from the Desire of Ages that the elders are the representatives of the unfallen worlds who are present in God's heavenly council. God has a council where all his created worlds meet together, where he discusses them. So God is a very democratic way of governance. So he has all these, they're known as 24 elders. The number is symbolic, but we don't know how many unfallen worlds there are. But the elders represent the representatives from those words. So that is just a brief unpacking of the verses, Isaiah 24, 17 to 23. Okay, now here's a summary of the details of this verse. There will be a global catastrophe or cataclysm. That's at the second coming of Christ. God will punish Satan, his angels, and the wicked kings of the earth. When it says kings, it means all the wicked of the earth, by shutting them in prison here on earth. Satan and his angels and the wicked will remain in prison for many days, which Revelation interprets as 1,000 years. And after the 1,000 years, there will be a second and definitive punishment for the fallen angels and the kings of the earth. Finally, the New Jerusalem and Mount Zion will come into view. In the city, the sun and the moon will be ashamed, because in the city, God will be present. So it's like in the middle of a day at noontime. If you take a torch and you start looking, will the torchlight be effective? No, because the sun is brighter. So that is what it means. The sun and the moon will be ashamed. Means though they will be there and they will be shining, God's light will be brighter, right? God will reign in Zion and Jerusalem before his ancient elders glorious. We found that they are the representatives of the unfallen worlds. This entire scene is a description of global events that will occur before, during, and after the 1,000 years, right? So the picture is one of a global cataclysm that the world has never seen before. Earlier in the chapter, Isaiah 24, we have a description of the same events, Isaiah 24, 1 to 3, which describes the reaction of society to the second coming of Jesus, with a reference which refers back to Revelation 16, verses 14 to 17, and then the devastation of the earth. So that is why Isaiah is known as a little book of Revelation in the Old Testament. In Revelation, God gives us a greater picture, more amplified, more detailed picture of what Isaiah gives us in Isaiah 24. Okay, so now let's read Isaiah 24, 1 to 3, where this is described. And another thing is, Mrs. White says that all the books of the Bible meet and end in the book of Revelation. So to understand Revelation, we have to understand the whole Bible. But now at the first part of this chapter of Isaiah 24, we also have a description of the same event, and notice it has different terminology. So let's read Isaiah 24, 1, 2, 3.
Behold, the Lord makes the earth empty, and makes it waste, distorted its surface, and scatters abroad its inhabitants. And it shall be as with the people, so with the priests, and with the servant, so with his master, and with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, and as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the creditor, so with the debtor. The land shall be entirely emptied and utterly plundered, for the Lord has spoken this word.
Okay. Now the word empty there brings to mind a certain verse in the Bible, like what was it like before creation, right? The Bible says the earth was without form or void, right? That form or void is another word for void is empty, right? So in other words, the second coming is going to empty the earth or return the earth to the condition it was at before creation. One thing is there won't be this huge earthquake with definitely will be a tsunami and the cracking of the earth and everything. When Jesus comes, it will take back the earth to pre-creation state, because also in Revelation it tells us that the sun and the moon are moved out of their place. So today we have the sunlight because God put the things of earth in a correct he set the things of earth in their orbit in correct way, so that it's not too much for the earth or too far away from the earth, giving us exactly what we need. So when they are moved out of place, where God has set them, we are going to study about that, how God put them in place at creation, then there is darkness on the earth. So this earth is going to be dark because there won't be a sun. And then if there's no sun, that is going to be terribly cold, right? Because the sun warms the earth. So that is why it takes us back to pre-creation state at the second coming of Jesus. Now let's talk about the three reasons for this global cataclysm. Now, why? Now the question is, why does this happen to the planet? Why? What is the reason that this happens? Now, Isaiah 24 verses 4 and 5 give us three reasons why this happens on a global scale, right? This destruction takes place. So let's read that. Isaiah 24 verses 4 and 5 provides three answers. The question is, why? Let's read it and then we'll unpack the verses.
Isaiah, go ahead.
Isaiah 24, 4 and 5. The earth mourns and fades away. The world languishes and fades away. The haughty people of the earth languish. The earth is also defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, and broken the everlasting covenant.
Oh, so Isaiah gives us clearly three reasons there, right? Now, what does it mean? Defiled, the Hebrew meaning for defile is to soil, to corrupt, to pollute morally, right? You can compare that with Jeremiah 3:9 or Jeremiah 23:11, where we find that the world is morally corrupt when this happens, right? And the three reasons are: they transgress the laws. They're going to find out what laws. They're going to find that out from the Bible. They changed the ordinances. We are going to find out what ordinances are. And they broke the everlasting covenant, right? Now, again, why does this happen to the world and to the kings and to the hosts of the high ones? It happens because of these three reasons, because they did these three things, right? Now, the consequences of the three reasons. Now, every action has a reaction, right? What will be the consequences of defilement of the earth by its inhabitants? The word therefore in verse 6 provides the answer. So Isaiah says this and this and this is going to happen. And then verse 6 says, therefore, because of what they did in what is described in verse 4 and 5, this is what's going to happen. So let's read verse 6 of Isaiah 24.
24, 4 and 5. 24 and 5 says, "Therefore, because of what they did in what is described in verse 4 and 5, this is what's going to happen." So let's read verse 6 of Isaiah 24. 24 and 5 says, "Therefore, because of what they did in what is described in verse 4 and 5, this is what's going to happen." So let's read verse 6 of Isaiah 24.
Therefore, the curse has devoured the earth, and those who dwell in it are desolate. Therefore, the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men are left.
Now, remember when we were starting this study, we did a few studies on understanding it. And in that, remember, we spoke about desolate. What does desolate mean? Desolate means to destroy. Why were they destroyed? Because of the abominations. And what were the abominations? They were the false doctrines that were taught, right? The false doctrines that were taught were the abomination, or the wine that was that Babylon gave the earth to drink. And because the people drank that, Babylon was destroyed and the earth. Because of that, desolation came. Desolation means destruction. So we have studied that before. So who are the few men who are left? It says, but a few men are left. Who are the few men? Now, if the world is destroyed and everyone is destroyed, the ones who are left should be the ones who are not destroyed, right? We have studied this also some of us studied before. So who are the few men who are left? They are the righteous. No, there's not going to be any living people during the millennium. Everybody is going to die at the second coming of Jesus, right? All the wicked will die, all the living wicked will die, and the dead wicked will remain dead, right? So everybody is dead. So then the earth is going to be burnt because of the earthquakes and all that are taking place. So there won't be any wicked remnant left. There won't be any wicked people left apart from Satan and his angels. They are not the ones that are left. So the earth is going to be there. And so the ones who are left now, like if you take Noah's Ark, who was left after the flood? The ones who were left were those who got into the ark. They were the ones who were left. Everyone else was destroyed, right? So the ones who are left are the righteous. And the righteous, we know, will be in heaven for 1,000 years, right? So a few men will be left. That means compared to the population of the world, there will be a small group of, compared to the world, the Bible says there's a multitude, unnumbered number, but compared to the world population that has been there on the earth, it will be a few people who will be left, and they will be the righteous, right? Now, let's take a closer look at the 3 reasons for defilement of the earth by the inhabitants. Transgress the laws. Now, comparison with other verses in the Bible clearly reveals which laws Isaiah had in mind, right? The identical Hebrew word for laws appears in Nehemiah 9, verses 13 to 15, and it links with Mount Sinai and the 10 Commandments law that God gave on Mount Sinai and the Sabbath, because the Sabbath commandment is in the 10 Commandments. So Nehemiah 9, 13 to 15 is describing what occurred at Mount Sinai, what God did at Mount Sinai. And this is what it says. Let's read Nehemiah 9, 13 to 15.
You came down also on Mount Sinai and spoke with them from heaven and gave them just ordinances and true laws, good statutes and commandments. You made known to them your holy Sabbath and commanded them precepts, statutes, and laws by the hand of Moses, your servant.
Okay. Now, what is being referred to by the word laws? The word laws is very general, and maybe someone might object that the Hebrew Torah also describes the requirements of the ceremonial laws, right? True enough, it does. However, Isaiah 25 verse 5 cannot refer to the transgression of the ceremonial laws. Why? Because at the time that Isaiah is talking about during the second coming, these laws are passed away. They passed away, they were done away with when Jesus died on the cross. So Jesus, those ceremonial laws pointed to Jesus and what he would do when he came to this earth and what he would do on the cross. So when the types and the symbols met reality, that the symbols and the types ceased to be because reality had been accomplished, right? So that's what it meant when Jesus died on the cross. Those ceremonial laws were also done away with because they had no meaning after that. The meaning of them was to point towards Jesus. Jesus came and he accomplished that. Now, God would not punish the world for breaking laws that were no longer binding, right? That were no longer binding. Therefore, there must be perpetual laws. Perpetual means laws that go on forever. That apply to the entire human race at all times, from the point of creation right up to the end of time. So incidentally, it is possible that originally the word Torah in Isaiah 24:5 was singular because of the Syriac and the Greek and the Chaldee all had the word in singular. Okay? Now, question, what is sin? There is one place in the Bible that defines sin clearly, and that is found in 1 John 3:4. Would someone like to read that?
Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law.
Okay, now notice how the Bible defines this transgression of the law, right? Now, this we read in the King James Version, right? Because modern versions use transgression as lawlessness, but the Greek word that is given there for law is anomias, right? And the Greek word for law is nomos, right? But when you add an A to it, anomias next to it, it means against. So anomias means law, nomos means law, anomias means contrary to the law, right? So nomos is the law, anomias is contrary to transgression of going contrary to the law, right? And this is the definition that you find for sin, which is characterized as the transgression of the law. Now, what was the first reason why God is going to punish the world? It is because the world transgressed the 10 commandments, right? Or they broke the 10 commandments. They were lawless. They didn't keep the law. Now, question, if God punishes the world for transgressing the 10 commandments, was the law still binding when Jesus came? Yes, right? It's still binding even now. But many think and many say that it was done away at the cross. If the world is going to be punished, right, for transgressing the law, and if the law was done away when Jesus died on the cross, how can we reconcile this world with that idea? So obviously, the law, the 10 commandments, was not done away at the cross. What was done away at the cross was the ceremonial laws that pointed to Jesus. And Jesus fulfilled that in reality. Now, according to Matthew 24, verse 12, the final generation will be a lawless one. Why would God condemn the world for lawlessness? If the law was nailed to the cross, right? If there is no binding law now, why is God going to condemn the world at the end of time if there is no law? Now, Jesus predicted that the love of many would grow cold at the end of time because of lawlessness. Now, this verse has the same word, nomos, which means law, right? It's found in Matthew 24, verse 12. Let's read that.
And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold.
So nomos should be translated because the transgression of the law will abound. So there will be there will be so many who will be transgressing God's law. And because of that, what's going to happen? The love of many are going to grow cold. They're going to lose the warmth of human kindness to each other because they are transgressing God's law. Okay. Now, question, right? How can something grow cold if it hasn't been hot before? You can't have something growing cold if it wasn't hot before. So it had to be hot, right? So now this is not speaking about people who don't know God. This is speaking about people who profess Jesus, who once had a hot faith, but their faith grows cold, right? Why did it grow cold? The reason given in the Bible is because of the transgression of the law, because they didn't keep the law, because they thought the law was not important, right? So their faith grows cold, and you can't have something growing cold unless it had been hot first. So not only will secular people be lawless at the end of time, but also many who claimed the name of Jesus. Okay? According to Jesus, these counterfeit believers will even perform signs and wonders in his name. It will be done all in his name. But Jesus will refuse to recognize them as he. Because, why? Because they are transgressors of the law. Now we know that Christians like to place a conflict between the law and love, right? We have heard that many times. But Apostle Paul says in Romans 13:18, owe no one anything except to love one another. For he who loves another has fulfilled the law. Then Jesus said in John 14:15, if you love me, if we love Jesus, we will keep his commandments. You will keep my commandments. Now, this is the love of God, that we keep the commandment. So if I love my neighbor, I'm not going to kill him. If I love my neighbor, I'm not going to commit adultery, right? I'm not going to steal his goods. I'm not going to steal his house. I'm not going to bear false witness, tell lies about him, against him. I'm not going to covet what belongs to him. So love is fulfilling of the law. So there is no conflict between the law and grace or law and love, right? People say now we are under grace, so the law is done away. So if you are under grace, you can kill? No, because Isaiah very clearly says, and the Bible very clearly says, that God is going to punish those who are lawless. So that means those who don't keep the law. So the law is still binding, and the law will continue, because that is what God is going to use to punish the wicked, right? Right? So what is one of the characteristics at the end of time? It is that the love of many will grow cold because of transgression of the law. Now remember, Matthew 7:23. Now there's a group of, who call themselves followers of Jesus, who perform miracles, right? They have cast out demons, they give prophecies, they appeared to be the real deal, the actual thing. And on the judgment day, Jesus comes and he says to them in Matthew 7:23, and the passage begins in Matthew 21, but Matthew 7:23 says this. Let's read that.
Matthew 7:23. And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.
Okay. So that Jesus is saying that even during the time that they were doing all these good works, casting out demons, preaching in his name, all these good things, he says, I didn't know you. Why didn't he know them? Because they were practicing lawlessness. They were not keeping the law, right? So once again, anomias is the same word that is found in 1 John 3:4, which means transgression of the law, which is the definition of sin. It is just one Greek word. In the Greek, it's just one Greek. And that's why it is translated as lawlessness in modern versions, right? Now, how does Jesus look at the transgression of the law? How does he consider the transgression of the law? Notice Hebrews 1:8, which actually comes from Psalms 40 verses 7 and 8. Here the psalmist is saying that the wicked end time generation will stand in contrast, in opposite, right? In contrast to Jesus, who hated lawlessness. Because why did he hate lawlessness? Because the law was in his heart. And now this is the Father speaking. Let's read that.
But to the Son he says, Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated lawlessness. Therefore, God your God has anointed you with the oil of gladness more than your companions.
Okay, so how can Christians say that sinning doesn't matter because they're saved by grace? So do we love what Jesus said? Does that make us Christians if we love what Jesus said? No. They are not talking about legalistic people who say, I better keep the law, else I'm going to be destroyed. No. If we love Jesus, right, we will let the Holy Spirit write in our heart his character, right? We will love what he did because we love him. And the Bible verse says he loved righteousness and he hated the transgression of the law. So anyone who claims to be Christians and who says the law was done away with can't be genuinely loving Jesus because they are loving something that he hated, right? Okay, now what's interesting is we have heard about the final Antichrist, right? What is one of the characteristics of the final Antichrist? Antichrist means someone against Christ, right? Antichrist, right? In 2 Thessalonians 2:7, it speaks about the man of sin, right? This man of sin sits in the temple of God. By the way, the temple of God in the Bible, in the New Testament, is a symbol of the church. So if he's sitting in the temple of God, he's sitting in God's church. So he calls himself a Christian, right? Now remember, whenever the Apostle Paul refers to the temple of God, he is not speaking about the Jewish temple. He's speaking about the Christian church, okay? You can read Ephesians 2:19-22, 1 Corinthians 3:16-17, among other verses like 1 Peter 2:1-10 also, where the Bible says that the church is now the temple on earth. But the literal temple is in heaven where Jesus ministered, right? So the church in the New Testament, when Paul talks about it, is referring to the church, right? The Christian church. Is that clear? So when it says that the Antichrist, one who opposes Christ, is going to sit in the temple of God, it means that he is going to sit in the church. He's going to be in the church. And what is one of his characteristics of this man of sin or this Antichrist, one is against Christ? One of his characteristics is, the Bible says, that this individual is the mystery of lawlessness. The same word is used, that is used is for the mystery of transgression of the law. Who was the first transgressor of the law? Who was the first one who broke the law? It was Lucifer, right? Was it Lucifer, Adam and Eve? It was Lucifer, right? And so then whose emissary is the Antichrist? Clearly, it has to be someone who is working for Satan. Common sense, right? So is that clear that in 2 Thessalonians 2:7, the Apostle Paul referred to the work of the final Antichrist with the expression mystery of lawlessness, anomias, against the law. And this Antichrist is a counterfeit, apostate religious system. It's not an individual. It's a counterfeit, apostate system that claims to follow Jesus. But like Judas, this betrays it. Now, Judas claimed to be, he was within the inner circle of Jesus as disciple. He claimed to be a disciple, but what did he do? He betrayed Jesus. Just like that, 2 Thessalonians uses the same references to Judas. It's a different study, where this Christian, apostate Christian system is, calls itself Christian, but it is betraying Jesus in what it does. Now, so the first reason why the world is going to be destroyed and the wicked are going to be destroyed and punished in the first stage is because they insisted on transgressing God's 10 commandments. Is that clear? So that is reason number one. They transgress God's law, and that is why they're going to be destroyed. Now let's move on to the second one. They change the ordinance. Okay, now let's look at the second reason, change the ordinance. What does that mean? What does the word change mean? Right? When we study the Bible, we need to look for the same word that is used in different places to understand what it means. Then it becomes clear. Right? So for today, for our study today, we will look at 3 of them because the word is translated differently. Isaiah 24:6 refers to the change of a particular ordinance because the word is in singular, right? A particular ordinance because it's in singular. So let's first understand all the meanings of the word change. What does change mean? Now, first we have Laban. Laban changed Jacob's salary 10 times. That's found in Genesis 37. Okay. Now, Laban is surely one of the worst people found in the Bible. He was such a person, right? We just have to read the story to understand how crooked and how devious, and he was one of the wicked persons on earth in the whole Bible. Now, then we have Joseph. Joseph changed his garments before he appeared before Pharaoh. That's in Genesis 41, verse 14. Then the same Hebrew word is translated abolish or alter. Abolish in Isaiah 2:18 or alter, change in Leviticus 27:10. So this same Hebrew word is translated as something that was changed. Now, what is the root meaning of the word ordinance? So change is to alter or to change, right? Now, let's go to ordinance. What is the root meaning of the word ordinance? Now, the lexicographer, those are the ones who wrote the dictionary, explain that the original Hebrew root word, which is chok, right? C-H-O-Q, chok, means to scratch or engrave, cutting in or engraving in stone. So that's according to the best Hebrew scholars. The original root word means to engrave laws upon slabs of stone or metal to set them in a public place. Now, this comes from Jack P. Lewis, Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, Volume 1, page 307. So then, this ordinance must have something to do with something that was engraved upon a slab of stone or of metal, right? Okay. Now, according to one of the best lexicons or dictionaries of the Old Testament, which is Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew Lexicon, the word frequently appears accompanied by other synonymous words for the law in the Old Testament, right? Such as the word testimony, law, judgment, commandment, right? So this word ordinance is accompanied by the synonyms of the word testimony, law, judgment, and command. Now, what is a synonym? A synonym is a word that has the same meaning, right? That has the same meaning. Now, the words synonyms are mitzvah, commandment, mishpat, judgment, berit, covenant, Torah, Lord, edut, testament. Right? Those are the synonyms that for this word, for the word ordinance. Now, it's not easy to distinguish between these synonyms as they are often found in conjunction with each other, right? Now, what does the word hoc mean? The word hoc or ordinance describes unchangeable decrees that God established at creation. At creation, God set in place certain unchangeable decrees that haven't still changed. Did you know that? Okay. So the word hoc describes unchangeable decrees. God said, oh, not happening, right? So what are those? Let's look at some of those. Very interesting. One is the creation decree. At creation, God decreed, right, that the sea should be within its bounds. So the creation decree which keeps the sea within its bounds, right? There are several examples for the creation decree which keeps the sea within its bounds. Let's read Proverbs 8:29. We are reading it from the New International Version because it's more dynamic to help us understand. Let's read that.
Proverbs 8:29. When he gave the sea its boundary, so the waters would not overstep his command, and when he marked out the foundation of the earth.
Okay, so at creation, okay, God said, you can come this far, but you cannot come in. That was a boundary. That was a decree, right? So when did God establish this boundary for the sea? Was it at creation? Did God mark out the week at creation? He also marked out 7 days and 24 hours at creation. He said the earth will turn for this 24 hours, and that's the day. The week is 7 weeks. So God set this decree right at the beginning at creation. Now there's another verse found in Job 38, 8-11. These are the decrees God gave the sea. You can come this far. So the sea will come and then the sea goes back unless there's a tsunami when the waters come in. That is when there's a displacement of the water. But generally the sea, there is the ebb and flow of the sea. Let's read Proverbs 38 verses 8-11 once again in the New International Version.
Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? At creation, the world was filled with water. When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness, when I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place, when I said, this far you may come and no further, here is where your proud waves halt.
Okay. So God gave this decree at creation to the sea. You can come this far, but you cannot come further, right? If God hadn't set that decree in place, then there wouldn't have been an earth. We would have all been part of the sea, right? So God put that decree in place at creation. And that decree, the word is hope, right? That calls that decree. Now, the other one, the other creation decree is keeping the heavenly bodies in their orbits. Now that is until he moves them out of their place at the second coming. But right now, the heavenly bodies are kept in their orbit. They're not going to go rogue and go all over the universe. They are kept moving in their orbit. Let's read Psalms 148, verses 3 and then 6. This is taken from the New King James Version.
Psalms 148, 3 and 9. Praise ye him, sun and moon, praise him, all your stars of light. Praise him, you highest heavens, and you waters above the skies. Let them praise the name of the Lord, for he commanded and they were created. He set them in place forever and ever. He gave a decree that will never pass away.
Okay, so at creation, God said, this is how you move, right? This is how you exist, right? You move in your orbit. right? Now, question. Are the new heavens and new earth going to exist throughout eternity? Yes, right? There will be a leave, a small suspension between, but they will exist forever. Now, God decrees that causes the rain to fall in due season, right? Let's read Job 28, verse 25 and 26. Again from the New International Version, because it's more dynamic.
Job 28, 25, and 26. When he established the force of the wind and measured out the waters, when he made a decree for the rain and the path of the thunderstorm.
Okay. Now, this didn't exist at creation, but God established it after, and it has existed ever since, right? The rain, right? So God decreed for the rain, right, to fall in due season and a path for the thunderstorm. So that they became, God had said, this is what is going to happen. So God decreed and put those decrees in place at creation. Let's look at another one. God's decree, which guarantees the regularity of seasons of harvest, right? This is speaking about the wicked in Jeremiah 5:24. Now, in Sri Lanka, we don't have seasons, we just have wet season and dry season. But in other countries, they do have their 4 seasons, and they happen exactly on time, right? So let's read what Jeremiah 5:24 has to say.
They do not say to themselves, let us fear the Lord our God, who gives autumn and spring rains in season, who assures us of the regular weeks of harvest.
Okay, so here again, God has set in place the seasons for this earth. It was a decree that he has given, right? Now this word hawk describes how God made an everlasting covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? God made an oath that could not be changed, right? Now let's read First Chronicles 16:17 once again in the NIV.
The covenant he made with Abraham, the oath he swore to Isaac, he confirmed it to Jacob as a decree, to Israel as an everlasting covenant.
Okay, so God gave the covenant to Abraham, right? The oath, he swore an oath that he would keep the covenant with Isaac, and then he confirmed it to Jacob, and that was the decree to Israel as an everlasting covenant that Jesus would come to save us from our sin. Now let's read Psalms 89:34 in the King James Version. God later promised that same covenant to David. So here, this is what he says in Psalms to David.
My covenant I will not break, nor alter the word that has gone out of my lips.
So this is a covenant, a decree that God made. God engraved the 10 commandments upon tables of stone with his own finger to emphasize their permanence and unchangeable nature. Can you change anything that you have engraved, carved out on a stone? It's difficult, right? You can't just erase it with anything. Now remember the meaning of the word hope. For how long is God's law going to exist? It's going to last forever. And it was engraved on tables of stone. So do you remember the word hope means, according to the experts in language, it means it is going to be something that is going to be there forever. Now let's read Exodus 32 verses 16 and 17.
Now
Exodus 30.
Go ahead.
Exodus 32, 16 to 17. Now the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablet.
Okay, so that says the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God engraved. When you engrave something, it doesn't go away. You can't erase it, right? Now, question for you. Is there a power in the word that claims to have changed the hope, the decree that God gave? The change of ordinances should remind us of the little horn of Daniel 7:25, who intended to change God's law. Now we are reminded that the root meaning of the word hope is to etch, to engrave on stone or metal. So what change did the papacy attempt to make in the law that God engraved on tables of stone with his own finger? That is the only thing that God wrote. God wrote it. Moses wrote the other things that God told him, but this God wrote himself. What divine ordinance that God established at creation and engraved on the 10 Commandments did the papacy attempt to change? The answer is the Sabbath. Actually, the present day papacy is also guilty of attempting another change in God's creation order, the marriage. They will doubt that later. Now, let's read Daniel 7:25 that talks about this change that the papacy, the little horn is going to do.
He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given unto his hand for a time and times and half a time.
Now, what does the little horn represent in the Bible? The little horn is a symbol of the Roman Catholic papacy, the system, right? We are not talking about people, we are talking about the system. Does the Roman Catholic papacy claim that it changed the law? There are zillion statements from the Roman Catholic authorities that they say, by the authority that Christ gave us, we have changed the Sabbath to Sunday. Have they changed the ordinance engraved on tables of stone? They thought they have, but they haven't, because you cannot change something that has been engraved because it is unchangeable, right? They think they have. Now, in what way has the papacy attempted to change the law? How did they attempt? How are they trying to change? Well, first of all, it divided the 10th commandment into two, right? That thou shalt not covet, they say, and then they say, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's goods, and you will not covet your neighbor's wife. Now, covetousness is just one commandment, but they have divided the 10 because, you know why they did that? Because they got rid of the second, right? Their catechisms don't have the second command, right? It jumped from you shall not have any other gods before me, to don't take his name in vain, right? Now, the second commandment is in the Roman Catholic Bible, but it is not in their catechism. And the catechisms is what they use mainly to teach the children, but also individuals who are converts to the Roman Catholic Church. They removed that. What does that commandment say? So what is the second commandment? Right? That they're left without, that only they are left with 9. So they divided the 10 to make it 10. Others, you can't say 9 commandments, right? The second commandment is removed because it forbids making images and bowing before them. So this is how the papacy system attempted to change God's law. How else did the papacy think they could change the law? They did it by saying, we don't have to keep the 7th-day Sabbath anymore. And that day of worship now is Sunday. So they say, okay, we have the authority to move it from Saturday, Sabbath, to Sunday worship, right? Sunday church. Now that's the change that is being described here. Here is the second reason for the destruction of the world. The first ordinance that God established at creation was marriage between a man and a woman. And the second was the Sabbath. Regarding the origin of these two institutions, the prophet to our church, Mrs. White, wrote this. Let's read that.
Marriage was from creation, constituted by God, a divine ordinance. The marriage institution was made in Eden. The Sabbath of the fourth commandment was instituted in Eden. When the foundations of the world were laid, when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy, then let this, God's institution of marriage, stand before you as firm as the Sabbath of the fourth commandment.
Okay. Now, interestingly, note that she uses the word ordinance. Has the devil attacked both of these divine ordinances in the modern world? Yes. Right? Why do you think the devil hates the Sabbath? It's because it is the time that we spend with Jesus. Why does he hate the marriage? Because it's a symbol of the relationship between Christ and us, his church, his bride, right? He hates Jesus, so he does everything to change the relationship between Jesus and his people. Okay? And we find that the Christian world, by keeping Sunday, and many liberal churches who are supporting gay marriage, inadvertently perhaps, they are listening to what the devil wants them to do. And that is so sad, because they are inadvertently doing it because they are not listening to the voice of God. Now, do we have a message for the world? Is it a popular message? Not anymore. You could get killed for saying that marriage needs to be between a man and a woman. Not so much the Sabbath, at least not yet, but that will come. But today, you have to be very careful what you say about gay, right? There is such a animosity behind that. Now, notice what Mrs. White says in Desire of Ages, page 281.
The Sabbath was hallowed at the creation, as ordained for man. It had its origin when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy.
Okay, another quotation from early writings, page 217.
I was shown that the law of God would stand fast forever and exist in the new earth to all eternity. At the creation, when the foundations of the earth were laid, the sons of God looked with admiration upon the work of the Creator, and all the heavenly host shouted for joy. It was then that the foundation of the Sabbath was laid. I saw that the Sabbath never will be done away, but that the redeemed saints and all the angelic host will observe it in honor of the great Creator to all eternity.
Wow. Clearly, the Sabbath is going to be an everlasting thing. It's an ordinance that God placed forever, right? Now, notice this next statement from patriarchs and prophets. Let's read that also.
Like the Sabbath, the week originated at creation, and it has been preserved and brought down to us through Bible history. God himself measured off. God not only measured the geography of the earth, but also the chronology. The first week as a sample for successive weeks to the close of time. Like every other, it consisted of 7 literal days. 6 days were employed in the work of creation. Upon the seventh, God rested, and he then blessed this day and set it apart as a day of rest for man.
Okay. So how did God establish the Sabbath? He had to create the week in order to have the Sabbath. And the Sabbath is marked by the sun, setting of the sun, right? Sun goes down on Friday, begins Sabbath. Sun sets on Sabbath, is the end of Sabbath. Now, in Selected Messages, volume 3, page 318 and 19, this is what she has to say. Let's read that also.
All those who hold the beginning of their confidence firm unto the end will keep the seventh-day Sabbath, which comes to us as a mark uh, us as marked by the sun.
Okay. So as long as this world exists, up to the point of the beginning of the millennium, the sun is going to mark off the week. God has set the sun there to mark the week, so the Sabbath will always be observed, right? So that is one of the ordinances that they keep. Now, Signs of the Times, September 14, 1888. Let's read that and see.
The Creator of the heavens and the earth commanded, the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. This command was enforced by the example of its author, proclaimed with his own voice, and placed in the very bosom of the Decalogue. But the papal power has removed or changed this divine ordinance, keyword, and substituted a day that God has not sanctified and upon which he did not rest. The festival so long adored by heathens as the venerable day of the sun.
Okay, so they keep the venerable day of the sun instead of the holy day that God has given. Now, conservative Christians today will fight tooth and nail to defend the marriage between man and woman because God ordained it that way at creation, right? They cry out against the liberal culture's attempt to change the marriage institution from heterosexual man and woman to homosexual or transsexual or whatever sexual that the world Satan has brought into this world. However, the conservative Christians are not consistent. It is inconsistent to restore one creation ordinance, marriage, and not the other, the Sabbath, right? It is contradictory to say that marriage must be between man and a woman because God made it at creation. And in the same breath, say the Sabbath observance has been changed to Sunday. This kind of double talk is unacceptable. But Bible-believing Christians need to restore both creation institutions as God originally made them. After all, both institutions are symbols of the relationship between Christ and his people. If marriage is still a symbol of that relationship, why not the Sabbath? They're both there, right? So that was the ordinance that people are going to break, that is going to cause them to be destroyed. First was, we looked at with the law, the sin, the law, and then these ordinances. Now let's go to the third. The third sin that will define the world and cause its destruction is breaking the everlasting covenant. Now there is only one everlasting covenant that God made with his son in eternal ages past, right? You can refer to as Zechariah 6 verses 12 and 13, where, before the worlds were put in place, God and the Son devised this plan. That's why it's called eternal, everlasting. That God in his God is God. So he lives in an eternal present. So he could see, right, that sin, he could see then that sin would come. And he and the Son put in place this everlasting covenant. The agreement was that if man sinned, God would provide a substitute to restore man to his original condition. Now, why is the covenant called everlasting? Clearly because it was made between the Father and the Son in eternity past. The agreement was that if man sinned, Jesus would come to live a sinless life in perfect obedience to his Father's law and weave a robe of perfect righteousness in his human nature for every repentant, believing soul. He then bore the transgression of the law upon himself, thus satisfying the demands of the law. The law demanded perfect keeping. We cannot perfectly keep it. We are fallen. So Jesus came and in his human nature, he kept it perfectly. This made it possible for him to offer us grace. Thus, it is not law or grace, but law and grace. Jesus kept the law, and because he kept it, he can give us grace, right? So the covenant did not begin with Abraham. It was renewed with Abraham and with Isaac and with Jacob and then with Israel and with us. And the covenant is with us also. It's a new covenant that Jesus has promised to write his law in our hearts, right? Now at Sinai, God offered to enter covenant with Israel, Exodus 19, 1 to 6, and then gave them the stipulation, the 10 commandments. So he entered into a covenant and then he said, these are the stipulations. However, we know that they disobeyed God's voice and broke his covenant. He then gave them the sanctuary services to teach them about what Christ would do when he comes to earth. So he gave them an audio visual. He gave them a visual to see. In the Old Testament system, the lamb had to be without blemish, without defect, right? And then the transgressions of the law were placed on the head of this animal who bore them in place of the sinner. This made it possible for the operation of grace. This represented what Jesus could do, right? This ritual represented Jesus who came and perfectly obeyed the law as the lamb without blemish, foreordained before the foundations of the world. That means set in place before the worlds were created, 1 Peter 1, 18 to 20. Then he bore the sins or the transgressions of the law, all of it, right? All our sins of the whole world upon himself. Galatians 3:13 and 2 Corinthians 5:21, Isaiah 53, 4 to 6, so that grace could be operational, so that grace could be given to those who come in repentance. Now, this is why Jesus referred to his blood as the blood of the new covenant in Matthew 26:28, when he said, it is finished on the cross, John 19:30. The covenant between the Father and the Son that they set in place in eternity past was ratified, right? It took place. It was a robe of perfect righteousness, and it was the provision for forgiveness of sin. So Jesus set in place, right, that we who repent, confess our sins, and come to him can receive this robe. Now, nobody was saved at the cross. The provision was made at the cross, but individually we have to go to receive the robe. It's individual. We can confess our sins individually, but provision was made, right, for grace to be given. Thus, the covenant has two aspects, two parts, the covenant law and the covenant sacrifice. The violation of the covenant law made the covenant sacrifice necessary, and the covenant sacrifice made grace possible. Because Jesus died only, we have grace. And the grace is something that we individually have to go and accept. Now let's read Deuteronomy chapter 14, verses 12 to 13, which describes the covenant law.
And the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of the words, but saw no form. You only heard a voice. So he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform. That is the 10 commandments, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stones.
Okay, so the 10 commandments are the covenant God gave Israel. That was his covenant, right? That is the document signed with his name. The covenant sacrifice. So that was the covenant. Then there had to be a covenant sacrifice. In the Old Testament, consisted of the rites and ceremonies that pointed forward to the one and only sacrifice, Christ. So when we trust in the sacrifice of Christ, he will not only forgive us our sins, but will also work to write the law on our hearts, because we are giving him our hearts willingly, and he will change our character. Our character is our moral, the moral character is our thoughts and feelings, which come out in our actions, right? So when we let the Holy Spirit change our thoughts and feelings, we will bring out truths that will be like Christ. Now, this is what God intended for Israel at Mount Sinai. But Israel failed to understand God's intention. Is the law involved in the new covenant? Of course. It's called justification, and it is called sanctification. Justification is Jesus is giving us the grace, providing the grace. Sanctification is he's changing us to be into his image. That's why he said, I will write it on your heart. Let's read Hebrews 8, 10 and 10 to 12.
For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says the Lord. I will put my laws in their mind and write them on their hearts. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. None of them shall teach his neighbor and none his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them. For I will be merciful to their righteousness and their sins and their lawless deeds I will remember no more.
So in other words, Jesus is saying, I'll do two things. I will forgive sins and I will write the law on the human heart. Isn't that a beautiful promise that Jesus has given us? We are not saved by our sinless conduct. We are saved by grace through faith. And in gratefulness, we obey the law. Right? So we are saved by faith in Jesus, because what Jesus did. And in our gratitude for him, what he has done, we will obey his law. We will allow God to write his law on our heart. Okay. Now God offers both forgiveness and the power to live a life of victory over sin. Thus Isaiah recorded the song of the redeemed in Isaiah 26:12. Let's read that.
Lord, you will establish peace for us, for you have also done all our works in us.
Okay, now the Apostle Paul also underlined that God is the one who works in and through us. Let's read Philippians and then Ephesians.
Philippians 2:12-13. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure.
Okay, Ephesians 2:8-10.
Ephesians 2:8-10. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not of works, lest no anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them.
Now remember one thing in the Bible, walk means our conduct and our behavior. We walk is our conduct, how we walk is our conduct, and it's our behavior. Now the blood of the everlasting covenant not only brings forgiveness, but also has the power in us to do his good will. Let's read Hebrews 13:20 and then 21.
Hebrews 13:20 and 21. Now may the God of peace, who brought up our Lord Jesus from the dead, that great shepherd of the sheep, through the blood of the everlasting covenant, make you complete in every good work to do his will, working in you what is well-pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen.
So we are not only forgiven, but Jesus promises to change our lives as well. Now, isn't that marvelous? Isn't that an amazing promise? Okay, now how is it possible to overcome? Now, in order to overcome sin, our minds must be stayed on the Lord. How can this be done? The big problem why we don't have victory over sin is because of what we are watching and listening. We let our minds wander, right? We are what we eat physically, and we eat also through our eyes and our ears spiritually. So don't think that we are going to reflect the character of Christ while we are looking at things of the devil and listening to the devil's stuff. That doesn't work, right? Now notice the secret in Isaiah 26 verses 1-3. What does Isaiah say there?
In that day, this song will be sung in the land of Judah. We have a strong city. God will appoint salvation for walls and bulwarks. Open the gates that the righteous nation that keeps the truth may enter in. You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you.
Is that a beautiful promise? We do not become like Jesus by merely glimpsing or glancing at him once in a while, but lingering and dwelling with him. That's why it says, I will keep you in perfect peace. Why? Whose mind is stayed on Jesus because we trust in him. Then 2 Corinthians 3:18.
But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord.
So not just glancing or glimpsing, but beholding him is how we will be changed, right? Now, Mrs. White wrote these wonderful words in the devotional Sons and Daughters of God, page 337.
By beholding Christ, by talking of him, by beholding the loveliness of his character, we become changed from glory to glory. And what is glory? Character. And he becomes changed from character to character. Thus, we see that there is a work of purification that goes on by beholding Jesus.
Okay. So we are being metamorphosed, if there is a word like that, or a metamorphosis takes place. Now, you take a caterpillar. Caterpillar is a terrible creature, right? We all run away from it. But when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, everything changes. His looks, his diet, his inside, everything changes, right? So a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, a totally different creature, totally different. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process because we are so unlike Jesus. It takes time. Thus, we see that there is a work of purification that goes on by beholding Jesus. And that's a beautiful statement. So that's the secret. Let's just change what we are looking at and what we are listening to, and we'll be amazed at the process of victory that we have in our lives. We will reflect the character of Jesus more and more, and we will be members of the final generation that through the grace and power of Christ will gain total and complete victory over sin. Do you want to be a part of that group? I do. I hope you do too.